Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Boy. I am your host, and this is the Niner Narrative podcast, where we bring context to the conversation. So, I wanted to do a podcast on a very boring subject. We're going to try to make it so it's not so boring, but this podcast is going to be explaining some of the advanced metrics that get thrown around a lot. I hear a lot of people ask what certain things mean: DVOA, EPA per play, and things like that. So I thought it might behoove everybody to, if I kind of broke them down, explained what they are, and I went through and just. So let me back up for a second. What is the point of advanced metrics? For a long time in football, people just kind of judged by box score, right? You've got touchdowns, yards, turnovers, whatever. Okay. The basic stat scoring of the games. But the problem with those types of statistics is they don't tell you anything about how or why. Time. How many of those yards were because of some certain situation or scenario? And further than that, somebody who puts up a ton of yards in situations that don't really matter is not as good as somebody, is not as effective for winning as somebody who performs well situationally. So one of the things that advanced metrics try to accomplish is to not just give you a statistical analysis of the game from a perspective of yards, touchdowns, and things like that. It's to take the situation and include that into the statistical matrix. And so that way you get a better understanding with a single number or a single stat of how effective a player was in any given situation during any particular game. One of the common misconceptions is that these stats were just sort of made up by people who want to make their player look better or this team look better, or they're just looking for fancy ways of analyzing a game. It's none of those things. Football teams have been using these types of advanced metrics for a long time, for years. And at a certain point, individuals came up with metrics and different ways of doing statistical analysis that even the pro football teams have started to use. Take DVOA for an example. DVOA is a proprietary method of statistical analysis. So nobody actually knows specifically what the formula is, and it changes. So that's kind of one of the flaws, but at the same time, it's one of the benefits of a statistic like DVOA, which we will cover in this video, is that it is the aim of DVOA is to be as accurate as possible, to give the best possible representation of where a particular player or team is at against the league. And we'll get into that and why that is. So let's dive into this. Let's breeze over some of the more boring parts. I'm a giant nerd, so I can go through this stuff in detail and not get bored. Not everybody wants to hear all the little fine-tuned minutia. This particular podcast is specifically reaching out to those people who don't necessarily understand what these are or why they're important. And so my aim here is to just give the necessary information so that everybody can come away understanding why these specific advanced metrics are used so often. So I'm going to do like the 5 or so most common. I'm also towards the end of this video going to do the difference between quarterback rating, QBR, and passer rating. A lot of people don't seem to understand the difference between the two, and there's a pretty significant difference. So we're going to start with EPA per play. So EPA per play is basically how much a single play changed the offense's expected point outcome for the drive. So in any given drive, there's a specific point outcome that can be expected given the situation. Does the offense achieve that expected result based on the situation or not? And it's a play-by-play breakdown. So how this model is built is it assigns expected points to every game state. So down, distance, yard line, time, timeout, etc. How many timeouts does somebody with 0 timeouts is not going to have the same expectation of points scored as a team that has 3. So EPA for a play and then EP after the play minus EP before the play is essentially how it's calculated. And that includes any points scored or allowed on the play. So why do teams use it? It bakes in situation. Okay, so this is the whole point of these types of metrics is it's not just did you gain yards, okay? Because getting a 5-yard run is far more valuable on 3rd and 5 than it is on 3rd and 10. A 5-yard run on 3rd and 10 doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't score you any points for the most part because it doesn't help you reset the downs and continue to advance the ball. A 5-yard run on 3rd and 5 advances the sticks and gives you a better opportunity to score. So that's just one example of how EPA per play helps to show you situationally how well a team is performing. So what is EPA per play? How is it, what's good, what's bad? So on offense, positive EPA per play is good. On defense, negative is good. So elite offenses are often around like 0.1 to 0.2 EPA per play. So it's not some huge number. It's a little difficult to decipher, but you want to be north of 0.1 really to be like, that's an elite offense. Some offenses have a negative EPA per play. Those are not good offenses. So what are some of the drawbacks of EPA per play? Small samples are very noisy, and extreme events like turnovers and long touchdowns can really swing the numbers. So there are some built-in liabilities with EPA per play, but it's a good metric of, is the team performing as you would expect? Quarterback drops back, clean pocket, delivers a ball on a slant on 3rd and 4, they get the first down. That is an expected result. If you call a slant play and the quarterback has a clean pocket, you would expect to get the first down. If you don't get the first down, then that goes backwards. It goes against you. That's why it's an effective metric. So moving on. And this sort of goes along with EPA per play, and that's success rate. So success rate, it basically measures consistency. How often are your plays successful? You can have a team that scores points but doesn't have a high success rate. That team is usually a very explosive team. They don't necessarily march down the field 13, 14 play drives and then punch it in. It's an offense that's more like 6 punts and 3 touchdowns on 9 possessions, right? They're either punting or they're scoring touchdowns because they have maybe a burner on the outside, or maybe they've got a running back that's really fast and he'll break a long one once a game, that kind of stuff. Just as some basic examples. But so success rate can be a little, there's some thresholds that over and undervalue things. So anyway, so let's get into success rate. So there's essentially 2 common definitions. Okay. EPA based. A play is a success if the EPA is greater than 0. So EPA based success rate literally just means that you accomplished a play that increased your probability of scoring. And then if you don't do that, then obviously that's a negative EPA. That's a negative success. Yards to go thresholds are, in my opinion, a little bit better way of looking at success rate. So this is what I was talking about with EPA earlier, and it goes along with this, and that is yards to go threshold. So that's the second threshold you have sometimes. If you gain 50% of the needed yards on first down, that is considered successful. So 5 yards on first down. If you gain 70% of what you need on second down, so if it's 2nd and 10 and you gain 7 yards, that's considered a successful play because you're putting yourself in 3rd and short situation. And on 3rd and 4th down, it's only a successful play if you get a first down or better. So the reason that teams use this to break down their internal statistics and metrics is it complements EPA. So you have EPA, which is how well did the play accomplish our goal of scoring points, and then success rate helps you understand how efficient you're being in that goal. Are we just being explosive? Because you can have explosive plays that give you a good EPA, but then you have a low success rate. So you're 3 weeks into the season and you feel like you're marching along. But in actuality, your offense is not clicking. They're not being efficient. You just had a couple of big plays that have kind of skewed the metrics some. So success rate helps you understand EPA per play a little bit better when you do have some of those outlying situations. That's why this goes so well. It's why it's so important to look at success rate and EPA together, not just one or the other. Now, how to read it. Good offenses live around the 45 to 50% success rate. Those are good offenses. You're above 50%, you are elite, okay? Good defenses push teams below like 40 to 42%, right? Anything below 40 is an elite defense, right? Some of the drawbacks, like I said, threshold versions of the yards to go, they can overvalue short gains in certain contexts. So if you constantly for instance, the Philadelphia Eagles in their tush push have a super high success rate on 3rd and short, 4th and short, and it skews the metric a little bit, right? So that would be an example of how the threshold version of success rate can be skewed somewhat by play style. EPA-based versions can still they can swing kind of heavily on like penalties and turnovers and things like that because it's kind of large jumps. And also, like a holding penalty that puts you in 1st and 20, I mean, it stalls a drive constantly, even with good offenses. It's hard to overcome that. So both threshold version and EPA based, either success rate has kind of a drawback depending on how you look at it. That's why it's important to understand what the metric is, so you can use the context of who's telling it to you and why, and the conversation they're having as to how much emphasis you should put on any of these statistics. So another one that's so this one's a little bit less well known, but it does get used regularly and it gets used by teams a lot. And that is completion percentage over expected. CPOE. What does it measure? It measures quarterback accuracy and decision quality relative to the throw difficulty. A tracking-based model done by NFL Next Gen estimates the probability a pass should be completed, the given air, and it also calculates in given air yards, sideline distance, separation, pressure, quarterback receiver location, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it builds all these things into the percentage of the quarterback. So you shouldn't just look at, does your quarterback complete 65% of his passes? I watched a game with Aaron Rodgers a few years ago. It was maybe 2-3 years ago. It was in his last MVP season. So maybe that was 4 years ago now. And he had a game where he had like 8 incompletions, but 6 of them were throwaways. So like a throwaway is not the same as an incompletion. Nobody got open. Instead of taking a sack and going backwards, you scramble, throw the ball out of bounds. That's actually a positive play given depending on the situation. So it would go against his completion percentage if you just look purely at completion percentage. So CPOE tries to bring in the situation just like some of these other statistics. It brings the situation into the percentage and into the statistic and gives you a more quality look at what the statistics are actually telling you. The context of the play, if you will. One of the reasons that the teams use this particular metric is it strips out all the easy versus hard throws. So there's some easy throws that are, a guy is wide open and you just have to put it on him. That completion is not as valuable as threading the ball into a tight window or layering a ball. This is what Brock Purdy does so well. Layering a ball over a linebacker and in front of the safety on the run. It's such a hard throw. So you get more credit for completing those throws than you do completing a 5-yard slant to an open guy. It's just cleaner. It gives you a cleaner look at how precise the quarterback is being and how well he's throwing the ball given the situation. And it's pretty stable. Sorry about that. It's pretty stable season to season. So it's a really good metric. It's much better metric to use than completion percentage. Much better. So how to read it would be like, so season long. So like a 3% to 6% is like strong. Negative suggests that missing makeable throws, that the quarterback is missing makeable throws or is consistently forcing tough throws. So you want that percentage to be higher. 3 to 6 is really good. Above 6 is like elite. That means that you're just making all the right throws. You're making clean throws. You're making accurate throws. And you're doing so sometimes under duress. If you're having to roll out and scramble left and you make a throw and hit a guy in stride on the run, and he, like those kind of things factor into this type of a statistic. So what are some of the drawbacks? Some of the drawbacks are model coverage varies by source. So let me try that again. Model coverage varies by source. Basically, what that's saying is that the model that's used for CPOE, it varies by what coverages are being played. And not all teams play the same coverages the same way. Also, there's a bit of a drawback if you have like small sample size where there's like a few deep bombs and stuff. So scheme can influence expected probabilities as well. So there's some things in there where there's some context that can be lost if the CPOE stat is not being calculated based specifically on the scheme that it's being run against. So a little bit of flaw there, but it is significantly better statistically to use that than just completion percentage. Probably the most common one that gets used a lot that most people don't really understand is DVOA. A lot of people use DVOA they consider it the most important stat in football on determining whether a player or a team is good or bad. If you had to use only one statistical number, only one statistical data point, only one statistical and only one statistical entry, this is the one you would use. It's the most complete to show where a player or team is at as it pertains to the rest of the league. What DVOA stands for is defense adjusted value over average. And the critical part is that second part, the VOA, value over average. That means that the middle team in the NFL, 15 or 16, whether you're above or below, or maybe 16 or 17, depending on where you're drawing a line, that middle team, how much better are you than them? So you look at all the teams in the league, everybody has a number. Where are you at as far as above or below the team in the middle? So it doesn't matter if you score 500 points per season if the rest of the league is scoring 650. That might have been good last year, but this year that's not good enough. So having a statistic that measures you against the rest of the league is far more effective at showing you exactly where you are, if you're actually good, if you're actually bad. There are plenty of teams who score points but lose, aka the Bengals last year. There are plenty of teams that don't score a lot of points and win. The Ravens, the Bucks, teams like that have had strong defenses, the 49ers a couple of times. So it's important to know where you stand with the in context with the rest of the league. So what it measures specifically, okay? Opponent and situation adjusted efficiency versus league average. Okay? Broken out by offense, defense, and special teams. So this breaks down every category of play with the situation baked into it. Okay. Each play is compared to a league average baseline for that down distance and field zone. So every team in the league that runs a 1st and 10 play from the 20-yard line, how did they do? You then get compared to how the rest of the league did in that same situation. You get a DVOA score for that play. Then it gets adjusted further for opponent strength and game situation. You get more credit for marching down the field on a good defense. You get more credit for stopping a high-powered offense. You get a higher weighted, right? This thing gets weighted differently in different game situations. Doing something awesome on the first drive of the game is nowhere near as important as doing something awesome on the last drive of the game to go win, right? There's a reason that quarterbacks and teams in general are judged more by how they perform in the critical situations, especially late in the game. There are a ton of quarterbacks who have a terrible first half, come out and play well in the second half, and nobody cares that they sucked in the first half and threw 2 picks because you came out and you threw 3 touchdowns, including a game-winning drive in the second half. Nobody cares about the first half. Situation matters. The results are expressed as a percentage above and below average. So the results are not this was awesome, this was bad. The results are this was X amount better than league average. So why do teams and the media use it? It is a long-standing, it's been around for a long time now. It's a transparent framework for team quality that accounts for who you played and when you did a certain thing within the game. It is probably the most important statistical metric that you can use to get an idea of where a team is. So for offensive DVOA, this is similar to EPA per play. Higher the better. Okay, 15% on DVOA, very good. Defensive DVOA, same as EPA per play. Negative is better. It's more like 10% is really good for a defense, and below, and then of course, even farther back is better. The only real pitfall to this one is that, like I said, it's proprietary. Nobody really knows what the entire formula is, except for the people that put out the statistics, and the details can kind of evolve. And you need larger sample sizes. The DVOA early in the season is not going to be super accurate, but by the time you get to like mid-season, DVOA becomes very accurate, and DVOA by the end of the season is usually extremely accurate. Extremely accurate. You rarely see teams with a bad DVOA score, if ever, in the playoffs, and you almost never see a team that's top 5, top 8 in DVOA not in the playoffs. I think last year, 6 of the 7 NFC teams, I think, were like top 10 in DVOA or something. Or 6 of the 7 teams were like top 8 in the NFC in DVOA, something like that. Like every year, the teams with the best DVOA are in the playoffs. The teams that don't have a good DVOA are not in the playoffs. It's not that complicated. So small sample sizes can skew it some, though. Now, the last one I'm going to talk about here is pass rate over expected. This gets thrown around sometimes as an advanced metric that it's really actually not that advanced. It literally is just telling you if your team had a pass centric or run centric mindset that game? Did they pass it more? Or did they run it more? I mean, that's okay. The only real difference with this and just flat out running pass percentages is PROE is basically the actual pass percentage versus the expected pass percentage. So if a team, typically a team will will pass the ball on 3rd and 10. So if a team runs the ball on 3rd and 10, that would be a negative PROE play, right? If a team throws the ball on 3rd and 1, which is often a run play, that might be a negative PROE as well. So that's kind of all this is doing, is just looking at what would a team usually do in that situation, and is your team kind of following the trend of the rest of the league? Because this is a play-by-play breakdown that is compared to what the rest of the league. So in any given situation, it's a passing situation or a running situation. Did your team throw the ball when they were expected to, or did they run it? That's all this metric is saying. And it's just a comparison to what the trend is with the rest of the league. The only real pitfalls, the definition of neutral can vary some, because neutral is like 3rd and 4 is a passing or running down, right? It's kind of a neutral situation. 3rd and 3 is probably considered neutral by some, as opposed to 3rd and 4. And that's why it's a little bit of a pitfall, is that the person defining neutral, it can vary. Things like injuries, weather, they can, of course, skew tendencies. So a little bit of a drawback there. There isn't really an absolute for this one. There isn't like a percentage mark that you get that will tell you like your team's doing well or doing bad, because talent and matchup have a lot to do with it. So you have to really just kind of know your team. And this is really just a statistic to help you understand whether your team is going with tendency or if they're going against tendency. If your team is going against tendency constantly and they're losing a lot, well, maybe they should stop going against tendency. That's it. So it's not a useless stat, but in my opinion, it is of the 5 most common advanced metrics that are used, it's the least important to know what it is, but it does get used pretty often, and teams use it a lot, especially when they're self-scouting. So I thought it was important to throw in here. Now, how do these kind of fit together? Just kind of a quick guide to break it back down quickly. Okay. So EPA per play is essentially the overall efficiency lens. Okay. Explosive, situational, things like that, right? There's different things that affect it, but it's essentially overall efficiency. And then success rate is consistency. So EPA per play, how efficient is your team being? Success rate, how often are they being successful? 2 little bit different things, but when you combine them, you get a really good idea of where your team's at and how well they're performing. The CPOE, it's just basically throw quality. It gives you kind of a lens into the quarterback throw quality. Are they taking a bunch of bad throws? Are they completing a bunch of easy throws, and that makes their percentage look awesome, but they're not actually making any real plays? So it's so effective. It's so much more effective to know how well your quarterback is actually playing as far as distributing the ball to the playmakers. DVOA, again, the most important one of all of these. If this is just nonsense to you and you don't remember any of it, please remember DVOA, what it stands for and why, because this is a really critical stat and it gets used a lot. It's a quality lens. What is the quality of the play given your opponent, the situation, and so on and so forth? A good play against a bad team in the situation that doesn't matter is not as valuable as a good play against a good team in a critical situation. Just the way football works. And DVOA helps you break down play by play and player by player how well your team is doing that. What is the quality of their play? And then the PROE is about intent. What are they trying to do? How often are they success rate, EPA per play, but how often are they going with or against tendencies to accomplish those things, right? So that's kind of how all those break down together. I really hope that was helpful. I've had a lot of people ask me about the stuff, and I've had people even like criticize me for constantly using advanced metrics and stuff. The reason you use them is because if you just quote touchdowns and interceptions and touchdowns or yards or whatever, you're losing all of the context. There are plenty of people that have put up big numbers in situations or in seasons that don't mean shit. The reason that a Josh Allen or a Lamar Jackson gets an MVP over a Joe Burrow, even though Joe Burrow has way better statistics, is because his statistics don't really mean anything. He didn't win. That's his defense's fault. It's not his. It's not like he wasn't getting his job done. But the quality of the plays he's making, the situations he's making them in, don't lead to winning as often as what Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson were doing. So even though they don't have the same numbers, they get the MVP because their team is winning. That's why some of these statistics are so important. And that's, maybe that's not a good example, but but these statistics are more important than your basic box score statistics. They just are. They give you context to why your team is doing what they're doing. Now, a couple of honorable mentions I want to throw in here. So win probability added. This is a little bit less common, but basically it's a leverage-aware version of EPA. It's really good for describing when plays mattered. Was a play successful when it mattered and when it's not? It's a very volatile stat. It doesn't really show you all that much, but it's an interesting stat to use as a part of the bigger picture. So take that for what you will. So we're going to go with total QBR and passer rating in just a minute. The last one I want to kind of mention before I move on to the quarterback statistics: pass, run, block, win rate. All this means is, did you win within 2.5 seconds? Did the pass rusher beat his block in under 2.5 seconds? Or did the lineman hold his block for more than 2.5 seconds? Was it a pass play? Was it a run play? That's all it measures. But it really helps you understand. You'll have an offensive line and a quarterback gets sacked 6 times, but the offensive line has a really good pass run block win rate because the quarterback's holding the ball for 3 seconds every time. You can only block so long. It's not the offensive line's fault that the quarterback can't process a defense. Flip that around. You'll have pass rushers that have a low win rate but have 10 or 12 sacks. Why? Because they have a great secondary behind them, holding on that extra half second so they can get to the quarterback. Flip that. Have a great success rate. Don't have a lot of sacks. This is something that you'll see from Bosa. If the back end's not holding up, you can have a high win rate and only have 7 sacks, 8 sacks. A ton of pressures, but not that many sacks. Why? Because the quarterback's able to get the ball out of his hands before you have a chance to get to him. Back end's not holding up. So those go hand in hand, and win rate is something that you're going to see from time to time that really helps you understand how well the trenches are doing based on what should be expected of them as far as how often they win. So, so moving on. If you go into QBR, I'm going to come back and do a little bit of a summary on these on value and ranking and insight when we're done here. But I want to touch on the quarterback passer rating and QBR. So passer rating, which is NFL rating or passer efficiency rating. You see those other things as well, but it's passer rating. What does it measure? It's a formula that the NFL has used since the 1970s to standardize quarterback performance. It's based on basic passing box scores. It's designed to range from 0 to 158.3. Why it's 158.3, nobody really knows or cares. But it's, anything over 100 is considered excellent. What are the inputs? So they take the box score of completions, attempts, yards, touchdowns, and interceptions, and they put them into a complicated formula. I'm going to break this down really quickly and try really hard not to bore you. You take A, which is completions times attempts, subtract 0.3, multiply that by 5A, which is all of it back into itself, and then you divide, right? So like there's this complicated formula. You can find it online. It's easy to find. But you take all these things and you put it into this formula, and it gives you a score on how well you did. This is nowhere near as effective as QBR. Okay. The real quick, the final component that you get is each component A, B, C, and D. It's bounded between 0 and 2.375, and then you take that, which is A, B, and C plus D times 6 times 100, and that's how you get your passer rating. So then you divide by a fraction, and it's A, B, C, D multiplied into that fraction, and it's very complicated, but it gives you a basic breakdown of how well the person passed the ball, kind of at a basic level. Why is QBR better? QBR is total quarterback rating. This is something that ESPN developed years ago, and it includes things that are more in line with a quarterback's total value, because a quarterback like Jalen Hurts doesn't get credit for passer rating. He's not going to have incredibly high passer ratings all the time. What he will have is really good QBRs. His QBR is much better than his passer rating. Why? Because it's not just passing plays. It's passing plays, but it's also sacks. How many yards did you lose? Rushing plays by the quarterback, scrambled and design runs. How many rushing touchdowns did you get? How often do you fumble the ball, right? Penalties and not just penalties that you commit, but also penalties that are drawn, right? Aaron Rodgers is like one of the best ever at drawing people off sides. You get credit for that, right? What's the context of the play? Down, distance, field position, score, how much time is on the clock? All of these things are important to quarterback's actual play. I don't care how many yards he threw in garbage time. This eliminates that. This weights things differently so that the quarterback, when he's just flinging something out to the flats in garbage time and getting 8 yards, it's a play that doesn't mean anything. This model helps weight those types of plays down. So the formula, this is a simplified description. The exact model is, again, proprietary by ESPN. It's hidden, so there isn't like a specific full model breakdown like there is with passer rating, where the whole formula is broken down for the public. But essentially, so EPA is assigned to each play. So the quarterback, or each play that the quarterback's involved in, which, I mean, it's basically every play, but if the quarterback just hands the ball off, that doesn't go into QBR. So how much did you increase or decrease the expected points on the play, right? Now, what are some of the adjustments that are applied? So credit is split among the quarterback and his teammates. How much credit goes to the wide receiver? A quarterback gets less credit when a wide receiver makes a spectacular catch on a bad throw, as they should. That's why QBR is so much better than passer rating. So much better. There's really only one reason to still use passer rating, and I'll get into that in a minute. But in today's NFL, there's no reason to ever use passer rating ever. Not when comparing modern quarterbacks. So all plays get combined throughout the game. Garbage time plays are weighted down. Clutch plays like on third down or fourth down, plays that are late in the fourth, late in the second, things that are considered clutch plays are leveraged much higher, right? Anything over 90 for QBR is like MVP level quarterbacking. 70 to 80 is going to be like Pro Bowl level, really good high-end starter. 50 is like your average starter, and anything like below 40 is like backups. Anything below 40 is bad. So what are some of the strengths and weaknesses of this? Okay, so it includes rushing, sacks, turnovers, and situational context. That is the key to almost all of these. The whole point is to bring context to the box scores to help so that the people, if you do, almost nobody has a chance to go and watch every single football game. Like there's a lot of football to watch. You can't necessarily always watch every game. Somebody like me who has a day job, I don't have time to go watch all 16 games unless there's a bye week and then it's less, but who cares? I don't have time to go watch every play of every game and break it down. And you'd really have to break it down more than once to actually get the kind of information that these statistics give you. So you watch as much as you can and use the statistics to incorporate that in what you see with your own eyes. And it gives you the full picture in the most detailed way that you could possibly have of where your team is at and how they're performing. So that's kind of the breakdown. I don't think there are any others I'm going to add. There's plenty of other statistics I could go into, but I don't think there's relevant. Trying to think. Yeah, I don't think there's any more I want to go into. When can you use passer rating? When is it more effective? When comparing quarterbacks today with quarterbacks 30 years ago. If you're trying to compare a Tom Brady and a Joe Montana, passer rating is a fine way to compare them because they played in different eras. So you can use the passer rating score to kind of just give you a snapshot of what their play like was in any given season or throughout their career, so on and so forth. So if you want to judge characters or judge quarterbacks from different eras, for instance, passer rating is fine. But if you're trying to compare Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, passer rating is not going to help you out. It's not. Use QBR. Not complicated. Yeah. So if you guys have any questions, leave a comment. If there's any other statistics that you guys would like to see me break down, I will go ahead and I'll either reach out to you directly, I'll put it in the comments, or if I have enough people putting things in the comments for what they would like to see, maybe I'll do another video on that. I can do a short. We'll see. I am going to be doing a salary cap breakdown soon as well, helping everybody understand the mechanisms involved in salary cap. So that we can all stop freaking out over these contracts with these huge numbers that don't actually mean anything at all. So anyway, until next time, friends, I appreciate everybody coming by. Do not forget, please, we need you, like, subscribe. We need you to hit the buttons, all the buttons, smash them so that we can grow this thing and continue to bring content and context just like this. Have a great night. See you next time.